Well, good evening. It is IN5, surface area and volume of cylinders. So we're going to have to find surface area and volume, both of those on this object. As we did earlier this week, yesterday, finding volume and then also surface area. It's applying it to now the cylinder, kind of like a soup can is what we're trying to find the volume and surface area of. If you look at the formula for surface area, you are going to find that the formula for finding area of a circle is in it, which is pi r squared, and it's times 2 because, as you can see, when you unfold the soup can, you are going to find that there are two circles. This is the top, that's the bottom. And then if we were to take that soup can and cut it along one edge and unfold it, it will create a rectangle. Okay? So the 2 is for the two circles. Pi r squared is the area of those two circles. Then you take that answer, add then to the next part of the formula, which is 2 times pi r times the height. Okay? This right here is our circumference formula, which again is 2 pi r, depending on the radius, okay, which would be this length, and then the circumference, meaning the length of it itself. Okay, and you can see the circumference dealing with this part, so you're going to have to, you would be basically using the radius that's given here, okay, and multiplying that by pi and then times 2. That is going to give me this length right here is the circumference. Okay, the height, this number right here, is dealing with the actual height of the shape itself. Okay, so that's this right here. That's where this formula is all derived from. Surface area is determining how much wrapping paper it would take to wrap the 3D object. That's basically what you again are trying to find, the surface area. And we've talked about that before, dealing with wrapping. I think we used it was a Kleenex box, is what we had talked about on Tuesday, dealing with surface area of the rectangular prism. Same concept, except you're dealing with these round shapes, but you will see that when you cut this off, when you cut it apart, and I'll show you this in class as well, what you end up with. Okay? So if you have not copied this down, be sure you do that now by hitting pause. Now for the volume of a cylinder, you're again using pi r squared, which when we found the area of a rectangle, you went length times width, the rectangular prism. Okay, when you did that, you were finding the length and the width. That's basically the base that you were trying to find. Well, that's what you're ultimately doing here as well, is trying to find the base, and they will give you the radius given on this. Okay, so when you take the radius, so pi r squared, that's the area of one of the bases, and then multiply it by the height, because that's going to give you the volume, just as they did here. We multiplied then by the height, okay, which filled up this container. Same thing here. We find the area of one of the bases and then the height to fill the container up. That's where this all of this formula comes from. So pi r squared times the height. Now what we have to do is use those formulas, and again it says make sure you write the formula then solve. Make certain you are doing so when you solve these. So for my surface area, again, for surface area, you're going to use the 2 pi r squared. So you're going to want to write that down. 2 pi r squared plus your 2 pi r h. That is my surface area. So let's use that. Let's plug these numbers in. And again, that's ultimately what you're doing. So 2 times 3.14 times the radius squared. So it's going to be 4 squared. Okay, you're going to do all of that plus 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 4, times my height, which is 10.5. Okay, so now you need to take this and plug it into a calculator, or we ultimately need to solve this as well, which this number here is 16. Okay, so now take your calculator and plug it in. So 2 times 3.14 times 16, which is then going to equal 100.48 plus 2 times 3.14 times 4 times 10.5, which equals 263.76. Now you've got to take that number and add it to my 100.48, which equals 364.24. So that's my answer. And most of the time it's going to tell you to round to the nearest hundredths. It could round to the tenths. In this case, we're going to round it to the nearest tenths. And so it's 364 and 2/10. And we are dealing with centimeters, and we are dealing with area. Therefore, it is squared. Okay? Now, when we deal with volume, you're going to use this formula, pi r squared times h. So, pi r squared h. So we're going to plug that in, 3.14 times the radius squared, which is 4 squared, times 10.5. So this again equals 16. So literally plug that into your calculator. 3.14 times 16 times 10.5. And we get the volume being 527 and 52 hundredths. We're going to round that to the nearest tenths. So 527 and 5/10, and we are dealing with centimeters, and it is cubic centimeters because of volume. Okay, so there's your answers to those two. If you have questions, again, please write those down, and we'll talk about them as we do one of the problems on Thursday. I want you to go ahead and solve both of these problems. Go ahead and hit pause and see if you can come up with surface area and volume that would equal this. So go ahead and do that. All right. If you were needing the formula, again, it's 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. So we're going to plug this in, and we're going to get 2 times 3.14 times the radius. Now they gave us the diameter, so the radius is going to be half of this. So 7 divided by 2 is going to equal 3.5, and it is squared. plus 2 times 3.14 times 3.5 times the height, which is going to be 14.8. So now we have to plug this in, and you're going to have 2 times 3.14 times 3.5 times 3.5. Make certain you do that. Okay, this again is 3.5 times 3.5. It's not adding it, it's not going to give you 7, so you got to make certain that you are multiplying those together. That gives me 76 and 93 hundredths plus 2 times 3.14 times 3.5 times 14 and 8 tenths equals 325.304. Now you don't want to do any rounding until the very end, so you have to leave your numbers there. You're going to add that now to 76 and 93 hundredths, and when you do that, now you can get your final answer, 402.234, and we are rounding to the nearest tenths. So now you can round. Never round until the very, very end, and it is centimeters and it is squared. So square centimeters because we are dealing with area. Okay. Now the formula for our volume is pi r squared times the height. So 3.14 times 3.5 times 3.5, because this right here equals 3.5 squared, times the height, which is 14.8. Okay, remember this right here is what this is equaling. So you'd be very, very careful with that. So we're going to again plug this in, 3.14 times 3.5 times 3.5 times 14 and 8 tenths, which now gives me 569.282, and we're going to round to the tenths, so it's going to be 569, and this is going to 8 is going to make that 2 become a 3, and is what kind of centimeters? Cubic centimeters with a 3 on it. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please make note of that, and we'll look forward to going over this again tomorrow. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of plugging things into the formula, and we've talked about that a lot through the past week and a half, and the importance of the formula. That is certainly the key to unlocking the door. Without that key, you're not going to get in. So that's what these formulas are doing. They're giving you the exact combination to breaking the code. If that makes sense to you or not. It's a little analogy that I like to use, and you've heard me say that before. You have to use that formula. Without it, you're not going to get the correct answer. I won't, and you probably won't. So best of luck to you, and hopefully this makes total sense, and if it does not completely make sense, we'll discuss it further tomorrow. Thanks, and have a great night.